just want to go there.
Yeah.
Talking the other day, I can remember when I was little, in this time change, you have to go to bed at the same time. It's still light outside. I vividly remember that, thinking it, I hated it. I hated it.
But you loved it once you got used to it.
Oh, it's adult. It could be middle of the night. If I can go to bed,
Oh.
I'm real happy. There's the sunshine. And naps are a little different now.
Stay out till the street lights came on.
Yeah. Yeah. Different times.
I didn't realize it at the time, but I think they were glad we were out and not.
Yes. Absolutely.
At the time, we thought we were getting by with something. After you become a little older, you realize maybe that wasn't exactly all there was to it.
They both time to get whatever she wanted done.
Ron was asking Stephanie, have you seen the new Salem?
No, I saw a portion of Academies, which was absolutely crazy, but I can't imagine Salado.
It's huge. It's right next to that one that looks brand new.
Oh, yeah, right.
Brand new. Right around out in the countryside, there's some housing developments out in the middle.
That was a big bond issue.
The county is.
Yeah.
You know, that, there's a historical. It's 1971, we nearly consolidated.
Really?
There was a vote. The industry part of it was coming behind that, because it was a Salado grant. Salado was dead as a boss in the late 60s. And it passed and Belton failed at Salado. So it's
Wow, that would have been big.
that would have been humongous.
Oh, could you imagine that? Yeah.
But Salado's even bigger than we are. Size.
Right.
Solid, Dan. Let's go.
What time's the 5:30 meeting start?
That's what's scary.
Hang on, we're not gonna be late on this one. We got the easy.
Next man's up. They get grief from the peanut gallery.
Oh my goodness. Time snuck up on us. Welcome to the meeting of the Belton City Council this Tuesday, 11th at 5:31 and 35 seconds. We are 1 minute and 35 seconds late. I promise we will make up that time. We will start off with the John Holmes leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by Larry Bird's pledge and invocation to ask for forgiveness for me by Dave Covington.
Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please bow with me. Father, we love you. We thank you for the beautiful weather. We thank you for what a blessing it is to live in Belton. Pray that you give wisdom and justice tonight as we consider the business of the city. Keep in front of our minds that everything that we say and do should honor you. Thank you most of all for your son, Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, we will call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Anyone who wishes to praise the city of Belton, they're welcome to walk up here and share what they think. There being no public comments, they can say other things too, but no public comments. All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. It's 2 items. The first one is adopting the minutes from the February 25th council meeting, and the other is amending the memorandum of understanding between the city of Belton and the Belton area citizens of seniors regarding senior center operations. Chair would entertain a motion. Oh, and let me say what this is. The agenda can be enacted by one motion by the council, and they can withdraw any one of these items for separate consideration if they choose.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve items 3 and 4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Item 5, hold a public hearing on the use of Belton's common tax revenue certificates of obligation series 2025 in a maximum principal amount not to exceed $17,700,000. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight's the public hearing for our upcoming debt issuance. You'll recall there's 5 projects in this bond issuance, 3 utility projects. By far the biggest one's the wastewater treatment plant, and then 2 general government type of projects, a fire engine, and then public safety center. So as you said, Mayor, the maximum per those bonds is 17.7 million. Maximum maturity is 20 years. The utility bonds are going to be paid off with utility revenue. We included this debt issuance in our rate increases when we and our rate, so we should be good there. And then the general government projects should kind of be paid for with general fund revenue. Should be limited tax increase out of this issuance, even though it's a very large issuance. So here we are on the calendar for further moving along there. Today is our public hearing. On April the 8th is the bonds will be priced. We'll come back that night at that council meeting with a recommendation to award the certificates on that night. And then a month later, we finally close and we receive the proceeds from that bond sale. I'd be happy to, well, this is a public hearing. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, so before answering questions, we will close deliberations. We will open the floor for public hearing for anyone who wishes to speak about our certificate of obligations in the amount of $17.7 million. There being none from the floor does not guarantee there will not be any from the newspaper and columns and Facebook. But, you know, I wish those people would come address their concerns about borrowing. Hopefully we'll have low rates. Our bond, what's our
AA.
we're double
Upgraded
yeah.
to AA.
That really and then we do that because we don't ask for money very often.
That's correct.
So all right, so we'll close the floor and reconvene for consideration of these certificates.
I'm never excited about debt, but I am excited about this issuance, and that we had the ability to tag along on some water and sewer revenue bonds and do some sensible financing for fire truck, and then also purchase of a new building and grounds. And the majority of that should be paid off in 10 years, so not 30-year debt. Rates are still very attractive, even though they're not at all-time lows. They are very low. And boy, this is a very, very sensible move for the city. And excited about it. We put in a lot of time and effort on whether everything qualified or not. And very confident. And, you know, hopefully we can do some early payoff on these. But it does make sense, very efficient for the taxpayer, and fully support it.
All right. Any other comments, or the chair would entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
That's just.
There's not.
Yeah.
You've had your public.
Talking about it.
Oh, just a public hearing. Thank you.
Check the block.
There you go.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well,
Any other comments?
Well said, John.
yeah, I think it's just well said. I think I
Yep.
support, I mean, I echo what John just said. It's very exciting and well done and good stewards.
And just a lot went on behind the scenes with Mike and our public finance people, talked about premium bond issuance versus par versus discount, shortening up the maturity on a portion of this. There was really a lot more involved than just number 5
Absolutely.
states right there. So thank you, Mike, and city staff for working so hard and diligent this to make sure it happened. And it is very, very sensible for the taxpayer.
Very good.
Awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. 6, receive a presentation and consider authorizing the building's life safety grant program. All right, Bob.
Mayor, thank you very much. I'd like to discuss this program with you and hopefully you'll agree with it and adopt it. So here we go. Just a little bit of background. The beautification committee met back in 23 and recommended that we consider some grant programs. And they also suggested that we have a building structure grant in which they recommended that we budget about $100,000, which we did. It's in our TERS budget currently, and then we would grant about 4 $25,000 grants. In late 24, the Economic Development Subcommittee met and talked about this. And we had since retitled the grant title name to Building Life Grants. And at that meeting, actually, they suggested that we consider raising the grant amount from 25 to 50. And then also add more money to the pot to get it done. So they said maybe 150 in TERS and maybe 150 in the BDC budget, that kind of thing. So that's kind of a little bit of the background that we have right here. The summary of it is right here. It's intended to fund interior non-residential building life safety improvements. So these are included these include those things that you see on the screen. But let me also say that the Imagine Belton plan anticipated incentive programs along with the standards that were recommended in the Imagine Belton plan that was adopted back in 22. And so far, the city has adopted the revised FIG program, the facade improvement grant, as well as the mural grant program. And also enacted, this is not necessarily related to the Imagine Belton, but also the Welcome to the Belton sign type things. So we've made some progress in that area. This particular improvements are related to things like businesses that are coming to, let's say, the downtown area, the near downtown area that encounter some development obstacles or some costs associated with their entry cost into the marketplace. And so some of the things that we identified that may be obstacles to these things are things like fire suppression, sprinkler systems, asbestos abatements, some environmental issues like asbestos, lead, mold, things like that, energy conservations, ADA accessibility improvements, and so on and so forth. The grant is intended to possibly provide some gap funding to close the gap between what the owner had anticipated spending and when they come to the city and then they encounter the building codes and other requirements, whether it's local, state, or what have you, then it usually boils down to these things right here. And so we would be a very good way to address those concerns and close the gap, so to speak. Let's talk about geography very briefly. The blue line that you see on the map is the Imagine Belton plan area. The red hashed area that you see right there is the TERS district. And the black lines that you see there are 3 of the Imagine Belton zones. So in the middle, maybe you can see it. This area right here. Look at there. So, now you can see it central down. I didn't know you could do that. How about that? And then we see the uptown area, which is right here. And then scattered on the north and south, you can see, wish I get this darn thing. There we go. In this area, for instance, well, it's not working. Okay. So on the north side, you see the main street areas. And you may recall from the map in the Imagine Belton, it extends down Main Street. And it goes all the way from the railroad tracks, hugs the outer side, Pearl and that kind of thing, along the UMHB campus on down to the highway. You can see 35 right there. Originally, the geography for the grant was intended to be the entire Imagine Belton area. However, that, as you know, covers a pretty big chunk of real estate. So we thought maybe we'd pare it down for several reasons. One, we looked at the central downtown area, the uptown area, and then the Main Street area. There's a reason why we have them on the map. And for several reasons. One, it pares down the grant area. And 2, those are some of the areas there where we'll probably see most of the activity occurring that's anticipated in the Imagine plan. Redevelopment, maybe some structures being rebuilt into restaurants and other things like that. Of course, there's a lot of things we can't think of that are that the private sector and their creativity will bring to the community. And they may look to this grant program to make that happen, that kind of thing. Yeah. So let's give you the summary of the project that we have so far. We're suggesting a max of $50,000 per project, a 1-to-1 match. These include safety improvements that I mentioned earlier, fire suppression, and that could be anything from sprinkler systems to firewalls to things like that, riser rooms, whatever. Even fire alarm systems, things like that. So mitigation of asbestos, lead, and mold. Energy conservation, which could be windows, insulated doors, mechanical systems, solar systems, you name it, it could be like that. And then, of course, we mentioned ADA accessibility. Also suggesting design and hard costs, so design and construction costs, and any other kind of similar items. You know, we try to be comprehensive, but we know that we can't always be a full, think of everything. So, for instance, the chief asked me, he said, what about structural items? If somebody's from structural stuff, well, that's health and safety, because our business is to make sure buildings don't cave in on them, right? So that's health and safety. So probably yes. We're also suggesting that the program is restricted to non-residential, again, kind of limiting the scope of the spending. Although if you had some mixed use development, we'd probably look at the commercial aspect of the mixed use aspect of that project. We suggest that we follow a lot of the same guidelines as we do with the FIG and the other grant programs. That'd be the funding source would be one thing, and then we'd come to the council for final approval, that kind of thing. So you see all the details there. In terms of budget, that kind of thing, we have some funds set aside in this year's TERS budget, as y'all know. And then, kind of building on the recommendations or on the recommendations of the Economic Development Subcommittee, we might have to engage in some conversations about upping those dollars either this year's or next year's. And we would have to begin the conversations with the BDC in order to make sure the program fits well with their objectives and things like that. And so our recommendation is that you approve the safety grants. And if you have any questions, we'll try to answer those.
Any questions, comments, or motion?
I think it's exciting times, partnership between city and developers or investors into the downtown area or uptown, wherever that may be. A little bit of near-term investment could surely benefit long-term or development of those areas, especially if they come upon fire remediation or fire suppression requirements, asbestos or lead paint. And just one other note, and I would like for every citizen to know this, that we're not taking property tax dollars using this. These are proceeds from BEDC, which are sales tax, a portion of sales tax, and then TERS, the reinvestment zone. And so I think it's a very useful dollar to reinvest back in the downtown area to spark some development. Then I think the investment goes with the building and not the business. So it's there to stay.
And I think this is just a continuation of what you can walk downtown or ride downtown and see has been some very successful programs that are already paying dividends, and I think good return on investment. I'm very supportive.
You touched on this, but I just wasn't completely clear. Say a building, you're going to put an apartment on top of an existing, would that be excluded? Because I know that we're not targeting residential, but if, like you said, a mixed use building, would that be excluded?
Oh, just the residential portion. So we would focus on the activities in the commercial side, non-residential side. And that's what we're suggesting at this point.
Okay.
I think in some of the areas that are typically more residential, you're going to have little box wood frame homes. That's what you're mainly trying to exclude, I think, is a lot of that. But then you may have downtown, you may have to have a 3-story building where 1 story is one thing and the third story is something else, which is something we're trying to do. And so if we're looking at the downtown district, if we preclude what we're trying to encourage and say, well, we want you to do this, but we can't fund because somebody's going to live upstairs. I think that's.
That was my concern,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Well, I meant that if you had that three-story example, and the first floor is all retail, that kind of thing, and they needed some help to get the project off the ground, we would help that. We just wouldn't invest in the residential unless the council wants us to do the mixed-use development. And so that's okay.
I think if it's in that region and if you've got asbestos on the first, second, or third floor, or you need risers for your sprinkler system on your first, second, or third floor, if it's helping health and safety in one of these older structures, regardless of use. I don't know.
I would hate to exclude that completely, given a 2 or 3 story building downtown, some of those older buildings, fire suppression is.
I agree, because they've also got to get it
Yeah,
to the fire safety level of was it a 2-hour burn through and that kind of thing.
right.
Yeah.
That often does need some help to do that for the upper floor.
That was what I was
Would-
concerned about.
Would it, if you just include the residential as a part of a mixed use facility and not just a,
Yeah.
to not get to not incorporate houses that it might be in between?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. We only suggested that just because of limitation of the fundings.
Yep.
Anticipated limitation of funding,
That's a
but
good-
that's all good. That's all-
Unintended consequence that.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
got, so that's good.
Yeah.
And Bob, some of the Imagine Belton plan area that we're talking about is not within HERS boundaries. Would
Yes,
this
sir.
be limited to properties that are in both Imagine Belton and HERS? You gotta be in both, check both boxes to to qualify for funds.
No, there are going to be areas outside the TERS district. And so the challenge is we need to we need to prime that pump. We need to put some monies in those areas outside the TERS district that you can see there or in the Uptown and parts of the Main Street area. But we wanted to get that taken care of now so that we don't have to worry about.
So to be clear, what you're saying, this is restricted to the Main Street area, which is 3 zones. The central downtown and the uptown districts. And this is this is only for those 3 areas and not the blue area.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
So
correct.
if a property
all
is
of
in the
that
Main
is in the
Street
TERS.
district, like on South Main there, but it's not within the TERS boundary, they would still qualify for this grant?
The limitation right now is that the only money we have set aside right now is TERS dollars. So you'd have to be in the TERS area or balance of this year, the 6 months or so. We hope to bring additional recommendations to you for the budget upcoming, would be supplementing those dollars, some additional TERS dollars, 150 in TERS dollars, and then hopefully 150 from BEDC. So there's some flexibility in the future, but if we, for any applications that come between now and October 1, we're limited to the TERS boundary.
Right.
Do we need to, in a motion, speak to including mixed use? To clarify that, to address the concern that was.
That would be fine.
Valuable because I think there was a limitation on that.
I've got another question. If somebody is building a new structure from the ground up, or if they're tearing down an old structure and rebuilding a new structure, would that sort of a project qualify for this grant? Or is this specifically for remodels and renovations?
I think it's for new and remodel.
Okay.
Because the same challenge exists, you know. But that's my answer. Now, if you all agree, then let's move in that direction.
I don't feel as strongly about funding new construction. I don't
Right.
either. I think that the nature of this is whenever you purchase an old building, or if you have an old building and you want to renovate it and bring it up to code, there are some additional costs involved whenever you inherit some of those 100-year-old problems in these areas. And I think that that's kind of what this is more for. Not that new construction is cheap by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
I would probably be interested in excluding new construction or tear down a new construction.
And what we've seen is that, boy, it's surprising when it comes to asbestos removal or lead paint or fire suppression is a huge surprise to most who are wanting to redo a building downtown. I think for somebody who's doing New construction, that's just normal. Everyday cost of doing business. Our expressions that deal with this. That's
Good, that's good.
Paying or, ADHD requirements.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of comments. I was gonna wait until a motion, and then to discuss it after the motion, because I don't want to influence the motion. But okay, so a couple of things. I think one is there are definitely some hazards with structures that are much more than 100 years old in downtown. Nancy Boston's building is the thing that comes to mind. And the fact that she was trying to do it on the cheap led to destruction of a historic structure because they didn't prop it up properly. It wasn't managed properly. And then it also dominated the sidewalks and the parking spaces around that for a long time. So I think one of the things we should do is work with those developers that are wanting to do that on the front, help pay for engineering services and that kind of stuff to make sure it's done correctly. And to potentially, and not talk to Matt about this, I think maybe even Sam, look at some of the larger cities like Chicago and New York. They've got these structural scaffoldings that you can put on sidewalks so the sidewalks are still usable while people are doing construction. I think it would be really good for Belton to own some of that because we've got some construction right now where you block off the sidewalk. And if you're in a wheelchair or it's hard or you're hard on mobility, you can't get from one side to the other side. And so I think that's something that we should look at. That's not just a match, but let's spend some. And the next thing that kind of gets into the tear down, is it new construction? Is it not new construction? Would you define Boston's building? Is that a remodel? Yeah. At what point? At what point was it?
do you want
And like the new what's going to be a steakhouse, like it was a remodel, but for them to do what they're wanting to do safely, to remove the brick so they could go in and put it in up to code, so it's solid. Well, is that a new? I've got a building that the front is separating from the walls. The side walls are all strong, but the front is separate. We'll probably have to take that down. Is that new construction or is that remodel? I think the intent is that that's a remodel, and the remodel is you have to take the old awning down and throw it in the trash and buy a new awning so it'll be safe. So anyway, so I think that this is probably going to morph a little bit. I think some of it may need to be led by the city to make sure that people, as they take on some of these old structures, that we're guiding them. So we may want to put in something to go along with this to compel people to redevelop safely. Because right now we have that, and it's there if they ask, but we can't proactively work with them. Like when you identify, like there's a structure downtown that somebody I think has bought or buy, and it's got holes in the roof and windows are missing and doors in. Nobody's doing anything. So that's where I think our intent is to work with developers to do it right. But I do think that there's some broader safety things that we could potentially use this funding for to be developer friendly for downtown. So that's because some people, they're not going to go figure out that they need structural scaffolding to allow pedestrians to use it. They're just going to block off the pedestrian.
We have a
Yeah.
precedent for what you're talking about, I think, for whether is it new remodel, for instance, if a house gets burned or by wind damage or something, and I'm not 50% Bob. There's some percentage and it's in the code now.
Yeah,
Sorry, I don't
60%.
remember, but you might want to model it something like that if that's the direction y'all
Yeah,
go.
I think that's probably good because like what they're doing, like what the L3 did is it was an empty lot and it was all new construction. But what they're purchasing, they basically knocked out the back and knocked out the front, and they'll redo that. And so that's probably less than 50%. But again, I don't know how you define. But it's
Here you're saying emphasis on modeling as opposed to brand new construction from the ground up, basically. So we'll have to just draft some criteria and it's like you said, let it kind of morph and evolve and evaluate some applications and bring those forward to you to kind of.
yeah, because asbestos rule is easy, sprinkler systems are easy, but then when you get into structural type things and like taking out old windows, putting in new windows, was that it? The historic district didn't like it, but we're paying for. Yeah, anyway, so it's just
It's muddy.
it does get muddy.
Do we have any developers who are planning to come to the office for a $50,000 check? I mean, is there anything like in the pipeline?
Not that I'm aware of, but if they're wanting money tomorrow, they're gonna have to wait a little bit.
I think it might be good, instead of trying to muddle together a motion, is to postpone this to the next meeting. Now that you've heard our feedback and have kind of a more complete package so that we can
Criteria.
Right,
Definitely
put a-
criteria.
put the correct motion together.
And I will always have the final say, similar to the
To the
TERS
fee.
grant. That, you know, mostly done by the staff, but nothing gets done without your approval.
We could certainly do that. Develop some criteria and come back with an application packet, basically.
Yep.
So just to a future meeting or to the next?
Switch
Okay.
around.
I'd like to move to post to a future meeting.
I'll second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to postpone the Building Life Safety Grant Program future meeting. Any other discussion?
I was just gonna add a comment. I could echo David on when does a tear down become a new construction? I think I'd be a hard line if it's empty lot. We're kind of not grant work on this.
Right.
More to throw that in there because it kind of,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Good point.
Oh, I think it's great though.
Yeah, it's a good program.
I do think it does need to have an incorporation of mixed use in some way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll cover that in the other comments that we heard this evening. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, all in favor for postponing, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, passes unanimously. Item 7, consider authorizing the BEDC Executive Director to execute an amended real estate contract and related documents for the acquisition of and purchase of approximately 62 acres from Jay Lover. Cynthia.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you all clearing the agenda so I could be very thorough with all of the items. Okay, let me get my notes in order before I continue with jokes. All right, so as you know, we're in need of property. Belton Economic Development Corporation is in need of property as we have limited inventory in the Belton Business Park. So we've been searching for opportunities to acquire property. And so tonight I'll present 2 different parcels to you that we hope to acquire. So I will start with a 62-acre tract on I-14. In December, the Board of Directors secured this piece of property under contract. The owner of the property is Devon, and we have secured it with a sales price of $2,907,000. We have a 90-day feasibility period into the contract. And so typically the board approves the contract, we bring it to you immediately, and then we go through our feasibility period doing our due diligence. So we've tweaked that a little bit. We really wanted to do our due diligence, streamline the process, come back to you, tell you what we know, and then make the ask. And so with that, let me talk a little bit what we've learned about the property. So going to start with just this particular aerial. The orange line represents the Belton city limits. So as you can see, the majority of this property sits outside of the city limits. 51 acres would have to be voluntarily annexed and brought into the city. It would also need to be rezoned to light industrial for BEDC's intended use. What we know is that the property is in the Dog Ridge Water Service area. Brief highlight over the contract, which I've already talked about, the sales price, the feasibility, which ends at the end of March. We've negotiated that the property owner will pay for the survey, and all of our contracts are contingent upon city council approval. And I did note one thing here. In your memo, I stated that the EDC was going to pay the 4.5% commission on the sale of this property, and that is incorrect. We did negotiate the commission, but it was in an effort to cut a price that was good for everyone. And so the seller is in fact paying the commission on the sale of this property. So let's talk a little bit about the evaluation. This is the topo evaluation that we conducted on the property. Of the total site, about 41 acres of this is suitable for light industrial development. There's an additional 15 acres in the yellow that can be developed, but it's going to take significant dirt work to do that. So I don't think that's likely going to be a big industrial building, maybe or something smaller. And there, once it's brought into the city limits, there will be some tree mitigation that'll need to occur on that area as well. And so that's kind of a high level of our topo review of this property. We did conduct a phase one environmental. As you know, we have a lot of experience with environmentally safe sensitive property. So we just wanted to be sure we were not acquiring another piece of property that needed further evaluation. The phase one revealed that no further analysis is needed for this site. There are a few areas that need to be cleaned up. Some on the side, a couple of piles of scrap metal and brush that needs to be cleared. And I think there were 3 wells on this prop. They recommend we plug and abandon. And talking with Clearwater also had the same recommendation. Just letting you know that we did conduct a phase one environmental on the property. We explored the power capabilities and we reached out to Encore. They've indicated that phase 3 is available close to the site. And so that's suitable for light industrial development. And we also evaluated the utilities. This is still a work in progress. I've shared with you already that it's in the Dog Ridge water service area. And so we've reached out to them, conducted an analysis. We know that there's a six-inch water line at the property, but we also know that it will need to be improved to an 8-inch or a 12-inch in order to provide the fire flows that the city of Belton will require for that site. We've not developed cost estimates for that yet. And we would have to work with the city to identify what options are available to serve that site for fire protection. Is it working with Dog Ridge, working with the city? We still need to analyze that. In addition, we've also analyzed the wastewater. And so you can see the red line there. That represents our initial alignment of what it could look like to serve this property with wastewater. That cost estimate there is about $800,000, but that's not the final alignment for a couple of reasons. One, we need to work with the city of Belton to ensure that our alignment is consistent or as close to consistent with the wastewater master plan that the city has for Belton. In addition to that, there will be a to and through requirement for wastewater extension. And so we need to work with the city to determine the best alignment. So in summary, with regard to utilities, we don't have a final cost estimate for that. We understand there will be improvements required to serve the site. We know that it's possible. And so it's a matter of further collaboration with the city and then just determining the timing for this. And I'm happy, any questions about utilities or any of the evaluation as I'm talking through this. Fiscal impact of the property, I've talked to you about the sales price, the survey. We'll share the closing costs. Utilities, I don't have a final sticker price for you yet, but we'll make those determinations and figure out how to phase into that. Just in terms of, can we afford this property? We currently have $11.2 million sitting in fund balance that's allocated to anything. And so we are able to purchase this property without having to go out for a loan or issue any kind of debt. And currently the estimates for the 2025 revenue are at $4 million. And that may be a little higher, a little less, but it just represents that we do have the fund balance and we are expecting additional funds to come in to help cover the cost of this purchase. So the board of directors approved the contract in December. We've spent January and February working with the city and with KPA and MRB doing our due diligence on this. And in March, the board met last week actually to go through the due diligence and make a decision on whether or not we intend to move forward. And so at this time, the board does wish to move forward with the property acquisition. And our ask is for council support in approving the contract for BDC's purchase of the 62-acre tract. Any questions?
little side volunteer work with BEDC and excited about this project. The BEDC has a great cash balance, over $11 million in their back pocket and good monthly cash flow coming in. We've been on the hunt for property to purchase. Really with I think the board's long-term goal is to see more light industrial opportunities for Belton. They're really focusing on I-14, I-35, that corridor, access south, access north. And I just recently drove down to San Antonio, took 130. And the number of really, really impressive, nice looking tilt wall buildings under construction and up in that area are amazing. And that was, I just have envisioned that for Belton for a couple of years now, and I'm excited about it. The other thing that you noticed from that little utility slide was that we're usually required to do utilities not just to, but through. And the opportunity that opens to the west and to the north, really, really impressive. So I'm excited about the project. I think BDC's put in a tremendous amount of work. Wanted to bring to the council a turnkey proposal, all-in cost, done all the legwork, yay or nay from you guys. And so Cynthia's done a great job. We've been hunting. There's more activity in the Belton Business Park right now with some additional purchases going on, land clearing, Avenue D expansion. And I just feel like we're really on the cusp of some neat things coming to our community. And so I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
Well, it's an action item, so we can continue discussing.
Well, I have a quick comment I just wanted to make. So when we talk about the reserve funds and that the 11.2 million, I wanted to just make a comment that that's purposeful. That's not just something that's been building with no plans. These are purposeful to be available for opportunities such as this that meet the vision and goals of offset that. So I think it's exciting that we're able to have those funds available for opportunities that have been planned for. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 7 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve agenda item 7. Any comments or questions?
Good job.
Yep. I'll share my comment. It's going to be the same for this item and the next item. So as mayor, I've been able to serve as an ex officio member, a non-voting member with economic development. And so you're always kind of torn is how much should you say if you're really not a voting member. And so I will say I try to keep a lot of my personal opinions, positive or negative, at bay as much as I can, so the board and the commission can do what they're called to do. I'll just share my personal thoughts on expenditures and where we grow and how we go with the city. When you get into these kind of purchases, these are strategic, and they're either good strategy or bad strategy.
Right.
But it is strategic. It's not just wake up in the morning and go to work. It's something doing it different. And so we've done some things strategic, and we just talked about it, like investing in downtown and using the TERS. So that's been very good. I think one of the things and Stephanie said it very well, our cash is strategic. Having a cash balance allows us to act when a company wants to come in, and we can use incentives, we can build stuff, we can work on infrastructure, and buying a piece of property when it comes available is strategic. So I think this is very much a strategic thing. I'll just say from our standpoint, when we look at it, we have to look at there's a cost to doing this more than just the cash. And so we just need to understand and consider the cost. What are the potential implications of water and sewer? And I'm glad that they did the work to say, well, this is what the cost would be. What's the cost as far as are we potentially abandoning something that comes to the door tomorrow? And could we have used that money tomorrow, but we've already committed it today? So I just want to share that regardless of I really look at it, and I go with strong towns as a model for economic development. And what they typically do is they map what's the investment per acre and what's the return per acre. And you're going to see downtowns investment is low and return is huge. And you're going to see things that are things like this is investments are high and returns are nil. Now, that's today. Now, and I was talking to John about this earlier. If you think about Barge's property in 1940s, you could probably got it for nothing because, you know, run cattle on it and you can't plow it. And so it doesn't bring any money and there's no water, you know, I mean, you got, you know, and so today you'd look back and say, man, if I would have bought that in the 40s, that'd probably been the best thing. But people are probably thinking, well, that's crazy. You buy that thing. I think it's one of those things that we just need to weigh the cost of these two tracks because, and John's mentioned it multiple times, we're running out of land. We're going to have something. And so anyway, that's my comments. I'll be a tie vote on either one of these. Any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, item last, 8. Consider authorizing the BEDC Executive Director to execute an amended real estate contract and related documents for the acquisition and purchase of approximately 165 acres from Janet L. Rand.
Okay,
Cynthia.
thank you. Thanks. So this parcel, this is a second parcel, and it's slightly larger and a little further from the last one. But let me talk you first through the contract, and then we'll talk about the site just to give you, I guess, a location. So this is South Belton, west of I-35. And if you're familiar with the Salado Business Park on Amity Road, it is adjacent to the light industrial zoned Salado Business Park. So about the contract, actually there are 2 contracts. It's 165 acres, but there is a resident on the property currently. And so the property will be divided into 2 parcels. One is the 5 acres for the home, and that's 1.5 million. And then the remaining property, the 160 acres, the price for that is 3 million. We've made the earnest deposit for the 2 tracks, and we are currently within the 90-day feasibility period. With both contracts, we did negotiate an extension if needed. We don't think that that's necessary at this point. And again, the contract's contingent upon city council approval. And for this particular contract, are paying the 3% commission. We are working with Wedgewood Properties. We worked with them to secure this site. And in our agreement, the seller will pay the commission unless something differently is negotiated. In this case, we are reimbursing the seller for the commission fee. So let's talk about our due diligence, and we'll start with the topo of this property. So let me note, 165 acres. Of this total property, 100 acres sits outside of the city limits. So this is another parcel that would need to be brought into the city limits. Rezoning would need to occur. We've already had conversations with city staff about future land use and the plans that the city's currently updating. But it's not currently, it is not all inside the city limits, so it would need to be brought in. With regard to taxing jurisdictions, this does sit in Salado ISD. This is so far south that it's actually in the Salado ISD for our property taxes. And with regard to developable, 112 acres is suitable for industrial development. 31 acres sits in the floodplain, which you can see is illustrated in blue. What I want to know, and you all know this, you can't build a structure in the floodplain, but depending on the topography, it could be used for parking. And in some cases, depending on how the property flows, sometimes it can be for drainage in lieu of like on-site detention. So there are, so to say that it's not usable, there are some functions still within a floodplain. This is me selling the property to you. So let's talk about our phase 1 ESA. We did do a phase 1 environmental on this as well. Like with the first track, there were no recommendations to do further investigations. Like with the first track, a couple of areas that need cleanup, some scrap metal, some brush piles, also some wells on this property that they recommend both Braun and water recommend that we plug and abandon the wells on this property. And this site, as we explore utilities, does sit in the city of Belton's water and sewer service area. And so we did extensive, I say extensive, but we did a lot of work on this property because of the distance and because of the challenges or the opportunities it presents for the city of Belton. So what we know is that Central Texas Water has a line there on Amity Road at the property. What we also know is that the best solution is to extend the city of Belton's water line to this site. So if we had a project and something had to move quickly, we could possibly serve them off of Central Texas, but ultimately the plan would be to bring city water to this site. We do have cost estimates for the water. Let me look at my other notes here. So depending on what the city required, a 12-inch line, it would be about a $2 million investment water to the site. BDC at this time, again, a lot of work still needs to be done with the city of Belton. And I don't know that we're in a hurry to bring infrastructure to this site immediately. We're already talking about it because we have a contract. I've been in meeting with site selectors and we're already talking, pitching the site. If a project came quickly, we'd want to move quickly. But I think just in terms of funding and other things that the city has to evaluate, like when you extend water all the way to that location, you're opening up a whole lot of dirt for development. And the city has been very strategic in their growth. And so we want to do this at a pace that the city is comfortable with also. With regard to wastewater, we ran some cost estimates. What does it take to just serve this site only? And we know if we just wanted a force main all the way up, that is a $3.5 million investment. I don't think that's the best investment for Belton. I think ultimately the win-win for everyone is how can you open up property along the way to continue to grow Belton. And so we have those cost estimates also, and they range from $4.8 to $6 million to bring down sewer that can serve other sites. The work that would have to be done with the sewer is to ensure that it aligns again with the city's wastewater map plan. And so when you see the red line on this property, the reason why it doesn't just go down I-35 is because to follow the topography and the city's plan for that. So on the city side, there's still some work that needs to be done in terms of policy. Where do we open up areas? Part of this extends outside of the city limits, similar to our I-14 project. So it's not an easy answer of just install the sewer because you're going in and out of the city limits in various areas. But we understand what the costs are. We've done kind of high level work with that. Let's see what else do I want to talk about. Okay, so I think the other option, which is not always desirable, but it is an option and it is being done, is on-site sewer or septic. There are some industries that. The other thing that I want to add that's attractive about this location is its location to the Encore switching station on I-35. We've had calls from firms asking if we property in this area of Belton just because of the power availability here. So we think for future it is a strategic location that will serve the needs of some industries that we see growing currently in Texas. With regard to the fiscal impact, again, the total price 4.5 purchase. We're splitting the cost of the survey with the property owner. We are paying the commission utilities. We don't know the final cost yet, and we don't know the timing for that. Maybe we phase in with just design and acquisition. Maybe a project comes along forces everyone to move quickly. And again, our fund balance, 11.2 million, and you see our estimated revenues coming in at 4 million. Any any questions about this? Again, the board, as with the other contract, they approved the contract in December. We've spent our time doing due diligence. In March, board met, and after reviewing all of this, they want to move forward. And we're excited about the opportunity to have 2 sites that we can start putting in front of people and in the background planning on how to serve them. Any questions?
Thank you, Cynthia. Any comments or questions? I think we said it all on the first one, but if there's any.
That cash balance stuff he was talking about. Not bad.
Strategic.
BEDC field, the board, I think, speak for, 'em, feels as though this is the very end of our development area. And with utilities being to and through, interest in the Wagner track, some other on I-35, that's an all-in utilities cost for us to do that, which I do not think would be the case. We would wait for other development to happen, shared cost with that, and hopefully have a developable site at Amity Road, access to I-35, I-14, very accessible, and a great property that backs up to the Salado Business Park as well.
Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve agenda item 8. Any other comments or questions? All right, there being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, passes unanimously.
Mayor,
That is the.
I really did want to thank Cynthia and BEDC, the staff, and the process that we went through. I really think the board made some significant changes into doing legwork before bringing it to the city council. And it worked. I feel like it worked really, really well. And I appreciate it. It'd be a great job.
I appreciate the not coming to us so soon to ask to do it versus being, like I said just before, missing out on something. Yep. And getting some of that work done first. So.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. Anticipating all the questions that might come up and having those answers really helps the council make a decision in a smooth process. So.
It's good to have John there to ask questions and participate too. I've got the vision that we need for the long term right there.
I think that continuity between the council and BEDC really
worked
yeah,
out well.
Anyone serving that.
Well,
Nice.
enjoy the sunshine thanks to daylight savings time.
Yeah.
We are adjourned.